Awesome. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Brokers Open podcast. I'm Dr. Ben Spears, the ambassador of Flow. I am here with the big guy as usual. Got my pink highlighter. I'm waving around here. I'm here with the big guy as usual, Matt Vi. How you doing, Matt?
I thought you were gonna hit me with an Experiamos or something.
Yeah, stupefied.
There we go. I'm doing fantastic, Dr. Ben. I'm super excited about the guest that we've got on. Known her for a long time. She's incredible. The audience is going to get so much out of this. Super excited. Especially we just started to kind of go over everything in the beginning and everything. And she started talking about stuff, and I wanted to say, hold on a second, we'll talk about that in a minute. Hold on a second, I'll talk about that in a minute, because we know that the guests are going to get a ton out of this. So
yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. So much experience, so much knowledge, all packed into a single human being.
Yep.
And we get to pick her brain today. So let's go ahead and bring her on.
Hello.
You're there. Sorry, I'm just going to make sure that I make you the big screen here. So we have Midi Shaw, a great friend of yours. So I'm gonna let you introduce her.
Absolutely. So Midi is so I've known her for a long time. We did real estate together back in Georgia back in the day. So she's been in real estate, very successful in real estate, lives in St. Simon's Island. I think one of the key things, or one of the cooler things about her, is she's always dug into what's going on with the board office. She's always dug into what's going on with education. She's always dug in with what's really going on, not just with, can I sell a house or not? She's been very focused on how to do it the right way.
Yeah.
How to make sure, paid attention to her education, how to make sure other people did it. So she wasn't just getting better herself. She made sure that she put that information out there for other people as much as she possibly could. And we're going to get her to talk a little bit about her history, right now, right? So Midi Shaw. So how are you today, Midi?
I'm good.
Super. So tell us a little bit about your background. We want to go all the way back to being a small kid that decided that real estate is what they wanted to do. How about that?
Oh,
what was your favorite toy as a kid? Let's start.
Yeah, as a kid, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. So, no, real estate was actually, oddly enough, I was working in New York, and I had a friend that I worked with, and she was taking real estate classes at night out in New Jersey, and I said, "What are you taking real estate classes for?" And she was the assistant to the president of my division. And she said, Midi, I'm not going to work for Matt. Actually, my boss's name was Matt. She said, I'm not going to work for Matt forever. And at some point I want my own financial independence. So I'm getting my real estate license. And I was like, oh, okay. And then of course, fast forward a few years, I end up down here and in St. Simon's, and commuting to Jacksonville to work in a corporate office. And I kept seeing signs out at the end of the causeway. There's a big giant billboard sign, and every now and then I'd see real estate classes, and I'd be like, oh, that might be something interesting. And unfortunately I could never do it because of the time, and I was commuting down to Jacksonville, which was an hour and a half each way. So eventually when I left that job, I was like, I'm going to get a real estate class. And of course, living in St. Simon's, everybody is always interested in talking about real estate. And so I was like, I'll get my real estate license. And then that's kind of where it kind of began. And just to actually, my 19th anniversary is coming up at the end of this month. I got my license on Halloween 2002. So this is kind of makes me feel old, but So
did you wear a costume to your test? Or?
Yeah. I went to the testing center in Savannah in a Superwoman, actually was it Wonder Woman outfit? Yeah, okay, that would be me. So
yeah, I like it. So 19 years in real estate, 14 years as an instructor. We're going to get to that in just a second. 7 years as a real estate school owner, right? And so usually, an agent, they go, let's say they have success. They just, they keep building on that kind of real estate career. Very few people, one that I've met, and it's you, says, well, I'm going to start teaching.
Right.
And then also I'm just going to start my own real estate school. Yeah. Right. So just tell me, I want to know a little bit about how your brain works to go in that direction. Because, I want to learn as much as I can from you, because, I'm thinking like I don't want to work for Matt forever either.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, you're the first person that ever said that. Most people don't want to work from that till the end of the day.
So, in all seriousness, how does, how did that process come about of you, getting your real estate license to now, 7 years owning a real estate school?
The teaching thing is something that I didn't really realize, but I was always kind of doing at my past jobs, just doing training for other people. And, but it was just a little small part of the rest of my job that I did. And then once I got into real estate, and that's one of the things that I talk to my pre-licensed students about, these new students, where I tell them that, where so many of them are coming out of a corporate regular job where they have to answer to a boss, and how they progress through their career is always dictated by those above them. And I try to get them out of that mindset. And I go, once you're in real estate, you're an independent contractor, you're your own boss. And I said, you're starting your own small business. So you need to stop thinking in those small terms with all these restrictions, and anything that interests you, you can go down that rabbit hole. And if that's what you want to pursue, you can. And so that's kind of what I guess I did, because I started finding really early on, I struggled in real estate because I wasn't from here. I knew nobody here. And so, of course, we say real estate is about all who you know and whatever. So it was kind of a challenge because I'd moved here from New York, and I didn't know anyone except my husband and his family. But I try to make myself as useful as possible in my offices. And then when I joined Matt, actually, he and I had talked, and I said, one of the things that I have been good at is explaining things in normal speak, not using technical jargon and all that. And so I started, he kind of pulled me in. So there's an example of, I wouldn't have known where to go unless somebody had helped me in that direction. And so Matt actually kind of pulled me in and started having me help out the agents in our office, understanding things, explaining things. And then, so I told him, I said, yeah, I kind of like this teaching thing. And then he's like, well, our company has a school. And this was already around the time during the last bubble, which of course we know where that led. But it's kind of scary now. I have students who don't remember the bubble.
Yeah.
And I'm still suffering PTSD from that. And, and they just look at me kind of blankly, like, really? There was a crash? What are you talking about? What's TARP? And when I teach finance, I'm like harping on Dodd-Frank and all this, and they're all looking at me blankly. And then don't even get me started when I go back talking about the appraisal industry during the S&L crisis in the 80s.
That's right.
And unless you're my age or older, or our age or older, they don't remember any of that. They're like, wow. But one of the things I saw in the bubble was that, we're doing this right now as well. I started seeing so many new agents coming into our market who 3 months ago had been working at a car wash. And suddenly they're filling out a contract for a buyer and submitting it to agents in my office. And they would bring it to me and they're like, Midi, look at this offer. I don't even know what to do with this.
Got soap suds all over it.
Yeah. And they were really horrible. These agents had no idea what exhibits were. They didn't know how to write a special stip if their life depended on it. And it was just really horrible. And that kind of got me into this mindset of, I hate, because this is, the bad agents who are not properly prepared are coming in and muddying up our industry. Absolutely. And affecting how we work, because we have to work with these people. And so it was that combination. And then I think I mentioned it really started shifting when, and our president of our association at the time, Royce Hobbs, he's still around. Yeah. He's been around forever. Yeah. But I was showing property one day, and he was the listing agent, and he said, "Hey, Midi, would you consider chairing our technology committee?" Which at our association at the time was really non-functional. It was really there as an advisory thing, just to advise the board on what technologies they needed, kind of like the AV club back in school or something. And I said, well, what does it entail? And he said, I actually would like to change, because at this point I was a little bit more tech savvy than the average agent. And I was doing a little help on the side for other agents, trying to get a handle on computers. And, this is early on with the whole shift into technology. And he said, I'd really like to use the technology committee to teach our agents about technology and bring them into the 21st century. And I was like, oh, okay. And so that was where I started really teaching in front of classrooms. And they were non-CE classes. They were just like lunch and learns at our board to help our agents. And this
Right.
and at the time, it was really rudimentary stuff about agents didn't know like even how to create folders on their computers. So they would open up their computers and I would just see nothing but files scattered on their desktop. And my OCD brain started like imploding, you know.
I hear you, loud and clear.
And yeah, and so I would kind of take over and I'd be like, okay, here's how you can make, you know, folders, and here's how you can do this. Okay, yeah, I see the fingers pointing at that. Is that what your desktop looks like? Yeah.
It's like files on files on files on files.
Yeah. I'm all about
I even
folders.
have a background.
I've got like folders and subfolders and everything is organized. And yeah, so it's, you know, there's the messy sock drawer and then there's the organized sock drawer. So
Yeah, that's all fascinating. Like I love those stories and how things build on top of each other. That kind of brings us, you know, to the main point of everything that we want to talk about in Brokers Open Podcast, which is, you know, how to help agents, you know, grow, be more successful in their business. You're talking about, gosh, you know, people 3 months ago, they were working at a car wash. Now they're writing contracts and they come in and they just, you know, they look like a mess. And you can just tell like, whoa, this isn't the way that our profession should be, you know, represented out there in the industry. So what I would ask you is, because we want to talk about what can help agents, you know, be better agents. What is it that you would say, gosh, like I'm bringing in a new agent? Because what we like to do is we like to say, okay, like tell us what you would do kind of with a new agent, and then our next step is, okay, now we're talking about experienced agents. You know, what would you recommend for them as a new agent coming in? Maybe you've never seen a contract, or you've gone through your class, but you've never written one. What would you say is the best thing that those people can do? I've heard people say things like write 6 contracts, whether you got a property or not, just to practice writing a contract. You know, if you practice it incorrectly 6 times, you know, is that a good idea? Do you have a mentor with you? Basically talk to me. I'm a new agent. I'm coming to you and saying, listen, I don't have any business. What do you think is the best thing for me to do to be the best agent that I can be out there in the market?
Oh, the thing is, there's just so many things that has to be, you know, starting out, it's just a blank slate. Where do you start? You know, and I remember when I started with a small firm and they basically just walked me over to an empty office, pointed out a desk and say, there's your desk, good luck. And they just left me there. And I was like, okay. And, but no, really, it is obviously to me, I mean, I'm an instructor. So I'm like, the beauty of real estate is that it's not all about just learning from experience in the trenches. There's education out there on any kind of topic that you can find. So if you're working with an investor and you want to know more about tax-free exchanges, you can find a class, whether it's real estate specific or not. There are classes out there in any topic you want. And then I always say the one thing is take as many contracts class as you can. Because, you know, you could take, some people I hear them say, oh, I took a contracts class 6 months ago. But yeah, that was with instructor A. If you take a contracts class with instructor B, it could be on the same topic. Usually it's our purchase and sale agreement, but from a different instructor, they're going to focus on a different thing. And I know that I took for, you know, I still try to, but I would take every contracts class that I could find, and every instructor would present the material differently to where after each class, I actually learned something new. Because there's so much fine print in our contracts. And to, you know, so, you know, some people focus on one aspect, another may focus on another, and someone may point out a sentence buried inside a giant long paragraph. And you're like, oh, I never even paid attention to this. You know, so it's just taking those different contracts, hearing the different perspectives of different people, and just, you know, just not saying, well, I already took this course, what's next? it's, you know, you can take multiple courses on the same topic and
Yeah.
you're still going to be able to learn something and get something out of it. And it's that attitude. And I think I mentioned in the, it's the curiosity. It's to just don't just accept when someone says
Right.
something, or when you hear something, don't just accept it and just go, oh, okay, that's it. That's all I need to know about it. It's, yeah, you hear something that just kind of, if it kind of,
Resonates, yeah.
yeah, if it resonates, go look it up. Go. It's not like we live in a world where you can't find stuff out. It's just, everyone knows how to Google. But for some reason they have a selective Googling mind and they only Google certain things. But no, there's always something more to learn. And that's where I think, again, it's this independent, where, again, I think it is a lot of it is a mind shift change. A lot of people come into real estate from that old corporate or other job environment where they have a job description and it's that whole concept of, oh, that's above my pay grade. As a realtor, we don't have a pay grade. There is no ceiling. There is no actual job description. We do everything and anything that needs to be done.
So
And
maybe,
in order to do it,
let me jump in for just a second, because this is a great point that I want to make sure that doesn't get missed, because you've talked about this the entire time. And this is one of the things very early on that I've loved anytime you had a conversation, whether I was in a class of yours or whether you were helping an agent in an office or anything like that. And I'm going to explain it in the context of what you're doing right now with teaching. You don't teach people to just get past the test. You teach people to understand the material. Everything that you've just talked about is about true comprehension, because it's your responsibility as a great agent to truly comprehend it. And you and I both know that's not how everybody does that, right? That's not how a lot of brokers do it, right? And that's not how a lot of schools do it and all that kind of stuff, right? We're not going to point any fingers, but if somebody's listening to this, they just need to understand that not everything is the same, okay? So you work very hard to make sure people understand it, and you're very anecdotal because of your experience in a lot of the conversations that you have with people on helping them learn. So Ben's question was, about new agents and everything, but I wanted to talk about brokers too, because you teach a brokers class as well, right?
yes. Mhm.
Okay. So in the brokers class, what are some of the things, if you could just impart, like if you could just take something out of your brain and put it in everybody else's brain that's sitting in the brokers class, right? What is there one or two things that you think that they should really get their head wrapped around as a broker that's going to help their agents be better?
Oh, well, yeah, that's the thing. Brokers is a whole different ball of wax. And I love teaching brokers because, I'm in a room full of people with actual experience. And a lot of times it's experience far different than my own. I taught a broker's class last year where there were only 1 or 2 residential agents, which is unusual.
Wow.
The rest of them were all commercial, property management, or industrial. And so it was really interesting because I learned a lot. And that's the beauty of it too. I get to learn a lot from the broker students. But the main thing about brokers that people don't really realize, and this all kind of goes hand in hand when I teach code of ethics and all this, is that being a broker, when I'm teaching brokers, I'm not really teaching real estate. Because by that point, you should kind of have a handle on it, right? We do review real estate concepts. So there's an element of pre-license review in it. But really, the broker's course is about leadership. And that's what the core is. It is about leadership. And when people think about becoming a broker, again, this is where it goes hand in hand with code of ethics. The reason some of our industry is where our public perception is that just because you're a top salesperson and made a lot of money and was able to fund the opening and establishment of a new office and now you're the qualifying broker, doesn't give you the skill sets to be a good broker. A number one salesman does not equal number one manager, because as a broker, it's not about real estate. It's not about selling. It is about leadership. It is about managing people. It is about developing people. It's a lot of administrative thing, HR issues that a lot of brokers put themselves at a lot of liability because they're clueless about what the HR laws are out there. And, we live in a litigious society. You fire someone the wrong way, you hire someone the wrong way, or you don't hire someone the wrong way. Yeah, you're going to be facing down an HR law lawsuit. And so, so brokerage management is about leadership, being a leader.
Absolutely
And
right.
some people have natural leadership skills. Some people have to really learn it. And some people are not cut out for it at all. And, we live, and it's just a fact of life. Some people are better as sheep and some people are better as, as the top dog that leads them. And so that's why, so I do really enjoy the teaching brokers, because it is really throughout the course, it's an ongoing conversation about leadership and being a better leader, being observant and understanding where your weaknesses are. And, and I always say, you don't have to be everything. If you like to sell, then be a seller, but put somebody else in place to take some of that management responsibility away from you. It is about understanding your strengths and weaknesses, delegating to the proper people if that isn't your comfort zone, and putting the right people in place, and putting your ego aside, because a lot of people, their egos won't allow them to admit that they're not good with certain things, and to do what is right. And of course, it takes obviously the knowledge, and just because you know something doesn't necessarily mean you know how to teach it either.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, so if, let's say, Matt's a shepherd and all the sheep. There we go, all the sheep. I was one of the sheep. Right, Matt was my
Here
shepherd.
we go. It sounds like a trap, Nick.
It's not a trap. So
Call Matt Little Bo Peep.
yeah, so now let's talk to, not the big dog, the shepherd. Now let's talk to the big sheep, right? So we have agents who've been in the market, who are listening. They've been in the market for quite some time. They've had a lot of success. They come back, they want to listen, and they say, if I pick up something here or there, then I know that I'm just getting better, and I want to make sure, just the same way that you thrive on that education. Our listeners want to keep coming and saying, I want to learn something every single week. Now, one thing that we know is that all experienced agents are experts at the contract. And and so I'm the only one who's gonna laugh out loud at that, but we got some little laughs in here too. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because you talked about the new agents. Take as many contracts classes as you can. I don't want to necessarily tell or go over the same point with the experienced agents, but let's say they've taken some classes, they've written 50 to 100 contracts. If they came to you and they said, hey, I want to get better, what types of conversations or what types of questions, you don't have to give the answer, what types of questions are you asking those agents before you give them the advice of, okay, well, this is the direction that I would go with your education, at this point?
In relations to contracts or just in general?
In general, just getting better.
Okay.
Imagine I've written 60 contracts. I'm coming to you, Midi, and I'm saying, Midi, I don't feel like I'm the best agent that I can be.
Yeah.
I want to get better. I want to continue to getting better.
Where should I focus?
Where should I focus? What kind of questions would you ask?
Wow. Again, I think that really, it depends on their individual personalities and where they are. Just on an aside, can I mention, as far as contracts goes, I don't care how long you've been doing contracts, there's always something to learn. I have served on the Georgia Association's Forums Committee for several years. I'm actually chairing it this year, which is a lot of work, and it's quite intimidating. The people on this committee are mostly made up of instructors and attorneys and some really smart people, and those meetings get pretty intense. But based on the kinds of issues that we deal with that are submitted by our members and our legal counsel, and the kind of discussions that go on, we literally debated the definition of a day for like 40 minutes. Because you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah,
Because
oh, yeah.
days are so important, and how to count days from binding agreement. That was another like an hour-long conversation.
Right.
You'd be really surprised. Right now, there's a kind of a hoopla right now with some contingency of people wanting us to define the end of a day as not being the end of a natural day, but being like
Yeah.
9 o'clock. And and it sounds ridiculous, but there's some merit to it. We can't just dismiss it outright. We had like a 2-hour-long discussion on that last Friday at our most recent committee meeting.
Yeah.
So we labor these little fine, tiny little points that our members using these contracts have no idea, but just even the nuancing and wordsmithing, of debating whether you use the word will or shall and the legal differences between them. You'd be really surprised by how much attention to detail there is, because these are legal contracts.
Yeah.
And most agents, you know what? They don't read them.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Yeah. It's, yeah. And they basically, our contracts, only the first page is really fillable. We brought everything forward and all the explanations are in the back. In between, nobody reads them. They go to the first page, fill it in, and then go right to the back page and fill in the exhibit, special steps, and they sign it and they call it a day. And they don't know what the content of the actual contract
So
says.
is that what you would continue? Basically just saying the same thing that you would say to a new agent, as far as contracts go, just learning that from first word on page 1 to the last word on page 20. Are you saying that's kind of the same advice that you would give and say that's your starting point?
Yeah, you know what? I
first of
think
all,
it
make
could
sure
be
you
because,
understand that.
because contracts are the foundation of what we do. And it's what holds the most legal liability. Because if we get into trouble, or if our clients decide to sue each other, it's all about the contract and how we wrote it. And if we failed in our duties and let our clients get into a poorly written contract, it comes back on us. And so really, as the foundation of our business, that they need to be experts at it. And so that's why I'm like, I get kind of crazy with contracts. In fact, I think I may be the only instructor, the only school that with my online students, most schools' online students are perfectly online. They are automated. They never meet them. When they finish their course, I require them to sit down with me it takes about 4 hours. I review the listing, the buyer brokerage, and the purchase and sale agreements with them.
That goes back to not preparing them just for the test, Midi. I absolutely positively love that. You're making sure that
Yeah, because again, I'm sending these people out into the world, and I don't want to deal with them on the other side of a transaction. They come, and I'm like, and I don't want to make them deal, my other friends and other people in the realtor family deal with this. So yes, I want to make sure that my students, when they go out, at least have a little bit more understanding of these critical contracts that they're working with. And of course, like I said, there's so much more than just contracts. But the other thing, can I do my little, so the other thing that I do advise my new agents, my students coming in, is one of the things, again, I mentioned Royce Hobbs asking me to join our board and be a committee chair. That was actually my first foray into leadership itself. I went in and I chaired a committee, and I chaired that committee for many years. And then that led into, it's just going down that rabbit hole. That led into me joining, becoming a director on our board of directors. That led to me becoming the board president. That led me to, which then it led me to getting involved in our MLS leadership and becoming president of that. By the way, I'm going to be president of it again. And that led me into more involvement at the state level. And I was a regional director for the state, and I've chaired multiple committees for the state over the years. This forms committee is the latest one. And just my involvement, but that in itself is another, to me, what I consider my success goes hand in hand with my involvement in our professional trade organization. And yes, I have completely drank the realtor Kool-Aid, but I can stand behind it because I do feel that it has given me a broader sense of this industry. It really opened my eyes until I really got involved at the local, state, and then national levels. It really, up until then, I was just kind of trudging along in real estate, but it was kind of a small, very small world. Once I got involved in leadership at our local association and beyond, it really opened up the industry and made me far more aware of how much there is, how much there is to know. And it helped me as an instructor because now, because of my involvement, because I go to the NAR meetings in DC every year, well, when we have them, and it exposes you to this greater world. And there's so much more that affects real estate. So when I talk about real estate in the classroom, I'm constantly saying we need to be aware of, for instance, I had a student early on in this current session who did not like me talking about COVID. She basically said that this is a real estate class and COVID has no place in it. And I'm like, no, I beg to differ. COVID shut down the world last year. And COVID is what spawned this current crazy sellers market. How in the world is COVID not relevant? And it's that notion, that small-mindedness that so many people have, and they don't understand that real estate is everywhere. And it is impacted by every political, socioeconomic, anything and everything impacts us. And that is what really my involvement at the Realtor organization really opened my mind up to all of that, and really helps me now try to prepare my students for the bigger world and to not live inside that little bubble, which is so easy to do. You get your real estate license and you focus on sell houses, sell houses, sell houses. It's more than selling houses. It's selling community, understanding your community, being involved in that community. And our communities don't sit alone. We're not an island. We are affected by everything that goes on around us. And so it just kind of builds. Yeah.
So how does code of ethics start? Under all is the land, right?
Yes,
Because
exactly.
it underpins everything. Real estate is just there everywhere. You got to get your head wrapped around it. You got to,
exactly.
If you're going to be in the industry, be in the industry.
In the industry, yeah. And I always say, and we have to be, and I say this all the time to my students, we are the ultimate jack of all trades, but expected to be the master of none, right? Because I have so many students who are like, well, isn't that what lenders are for? And I'm like, yeah, but are the lenders, at what point in a buyer's transaction are the lenders involved? Probably hopefully at the very beginning to pre-approve them.
Right.
And then not again until you find a house and you go under contract. In the middle, that critical part in between is where we are with the buyers. We know what they like. We know what their motivations are. We know all these things. And so if we just rely on the lender to come up with creative financial solutions or lending solutions, it's too late, And so, and I know I actually helped a buyer buy more house for less money, because in this situation, I knew the developer builder, and I knew that their main goal was to sell at a sale price as high as possible to maintain the value in their development. And my buyer was a fixed income retiree who was looking at her monthly payment. Right. At the end of the day, I got the developer to pay some discount points to bring down the interest rate, which allowed her to buy more, pay up her, her purchase price. And it ended up at the end of the day, it ended up making her monthly payment like $10 less, but she was able to borrow a few thousand more. And it was me that came up with it because our lender wasn't around. He wasn't in that conversation. I figured it out. Like I kind of crunched the numbers and it worked to me. So then I presented it to him and he crunched it and came back and said, yeah, that would work. And then I approached the seller with this option and I said, would you consider doing this? And he said, you know what, Midi, put it down on paper, make an offer and we'll talk. Right. We did it. I love that. Did it right out of the gate. So again, this is, and a lot of people think that, oh, that's a lender thing. We don't have to worry about it. Or that's an appraiser thing that we don't need to worry about it. And so many things is refer it to the attorney, but that's just a cop out. If we have a professional perception problem out there in our industry where the reason people like to screw us out of our commission is that they don't respect what we do.
Absolutely.
Of course, I blame the media on that. I really hate television shows where they focus on real estate because they make us all look like a bunch of idiots. And I actually kind of walk around and I go, yes, they basically see frumpy real estate agents schlumping around a house going, this is the kitchen, this is the living room. You want to make an offer, right? And then they fade to black. And then the real critical, important stuff that we do, the contracts, the negotiations, the talking our clients off the ledge when something happens, they skip all of that. And 3 months later, the buyers are in their new home. And so the public doesn't see the importance of what we do, the value of what we
Because a
do.
lot of times whenever they're trained to get their license, the reason why is because people are preparing them for the test, which is
Exactly.
right. And we want them to actually understand all of what they do. So I
Yeah.
gotta ask you though. So we love having you on the podcast, but Ryan has a podcast too, right? Your
Yes,
husband?
it does. Yeah. So my husband is a Star Wars Star Wars collector for the most part. He's of that age that, he was a certain age when Star Wars first
Right.
came out. And now that he's middle-aged and has some disposable income, and that's how most of the collectors are, they're about his age. He collects. He's really into toys in general, vintage stuff. But he has a group of friends here. One of them is a local radio host. And so over the years, we'd go out to dinner, and basically he and Scott would just sit and talk about toys. And Scott's a huge Star Wars fan. And they talk about toys and this and that. And at one point they were like, we should all try and get together. So they got two other geeky Star Wars friends. And so Ryan is the toy expert because his knowledge actually expands beyond Star Wars and all that. And he actually is a customizer. He actually makes action figures, and he's kind of known in that circle. But they called it Dinner for Geeks because it's for geeks basically having dinner together, talking about geeky things and all kinds of stuff. And so they had a pretty good run for a while, and then life kind of got away from them. And so now they get together when they can. So it's rather sporadic, but it's out there. I don't know. Scott actually does all the engineering and producing of it. So, but I know it's like on iTunes or whatever, all those different. Yeah. So but
cool.
yeah. So it's and I don't listen to it because I was like, people goes, have you listened to it? I'm like, do you know how many dinners I've actually sat through with these geeks? Like, no, I don't need to be sitting there listening to their podcasts because I've heard enough of it. Yeah. And at one point, Scott and Ryan were talking about something really geeky one day, and I was just on the side, and he hung up, and I said, we need to get divorced. And he said, why? And I said, because I understood everything you guys were talking about. So yeah, I was a little freaked out. So I was like, okay, we need to end this right now. Yeah.
So funny. So we want to make sure that all of our listeners, have the opportunity to connect with you, reach out and ask you questions, or try and learn more about your business and your school.
Absolutely.
So tell us, what's the easiest way for our listeners to contact Midi Shaw and learn a little bit more about
well, I have my school website is it's myrepc.com because my school is Real Estate Performance Center. And some people have given me flack about the name, and because it has performance in it. And somebody actually said, what, do you guys do ballet? And I'm like, well, yes, we do. But, because it was, when you pick a name nowadays, you got to make sure that you can get the domain for it, and all that nonsense. But I chose the name because I feel like my job is to enhance the performance of real estate agents, because we do talk about performing, how you perform for your clients, and so that's why it is about enhancing your performance as a real estate professional. And so that's why it's named as it is. So, but it's a big mouthful. So you can actually go to realestateperformancecenter.com, but the shortened version is myrepc.com. So everything is there. I'm on LinkedIn. It's just Midi Shaw. There's not many of us out there. And I do have, it's Facebook. It's also, I think it's also my REPC is my, my school page. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, guys, I will find all the, go ahead.
Yeah. And I'm not much of an Instagram. Everyone's going on Instagram, but I'm more of a word person, and Instagram is more pictures. And I've never been much of a photographer. I don't feel the urge to take a picture of everything. So I don't have much to post on Instagram. So I'm more of a snarky humor, kind of a written word kind of person. So
yeah, everybody has their platform, as I like to say, and as long as you own it, then there's success on that platform. So guys, all of those things that she just mentioned, I'll make sure that we put in the description below. Before I close this out, any further things to add from you? And of course, we want to thank Midi for coming on the show.
Big takeaway is, and I love the word performance. Mitty, by the way, right?
Good.
Because that puts it in perspective that you're up there and the audience is paying attention to what you're trying to help them understand. And so absolutely performance is 100% of it. I think if more agents looked at it like they were actually trying to perform on behalf of their buyer and their seller, I think they would probably end up with a lot better results. They're going to get more referrals and their business is going to grow. So, I love the word performance in the name. As far as collectively all of this, I love how much you lean into the education on things. I think our industry would be in a completely different situation if more people even took a tenth of what you do from an education standpoint and just leaned into some of what they were doing. I also love that how involved you are in the board office. I don't know that everybody needs to be as involved, right? If you love that, that's fantastic. If you don't, that's great. But I don't think they can be completely absent from it either. I think that's a mistake whenever people just ignore the board office, ignore the association, ignore Florida Association or Georgia Association of Realtors and NAR and all the things that they offer. There's a ton of information that they're able to get from that, right?
But it also helps set your reputation in a broader, into a broader pool. Because I actually have gotten business. In fact, I actually teach my brokers, not through my own school. I actually teach it through Capitus Learning in Atlanta, which is the Atlanta Board of Realtors School.
Right.
And they reached out to me last summer because we were now on Zoom. And because of Zoom, because of COVID, actually my business I've gotten busier.
Right.
But they reached out to me because they needed they needed a pinch hitter for a broker's course that was scheduled and their instructor couldn't do it. And they knew me through my state involvement. And they reached out to me, little old me in little St. Simon's, and they said, "Hey, Midi, can you teach the brokers class?" And I said, "Sure." And so I became part of their rotation now. And that was because of my involvement in a larger, at a larger level. And so because of that, and that's the thing, it's like, don't live inside your little bubble. You can have an opportunity for referrals, and it enhances your business and your reputation beyond that little pond that you can just leave yourself in. There's a much wider ocean out there, and why not swim it? So
such a great example.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Midi, thank you so much for coming on. I'm getting ready to wrap this up and put a bow on it. Super grateful for you being here. So guys, if you're listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Deezer, any of those platforms, make sure you hit that follow button. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that red subscribe button, that bell right beside it. You get notified every time we drop a new episode. Feel free to go watch and listen to all of these at brokersopenpodcast.com. Matt.
Yes.
We have amazing guests like Midi
Absolutely.
on, right? You are the shepherd. Right,
you
sky the big guy. You're little Bo Peep.
I don't think that's the last time I'm gonna hear that somehow. I would be willing to bet the thumbnail for this, Midi, is me with a little shepherd, little Bo Peep dress on and holding up a crook.
But one thing that we know about Brokers Open Podcast is that it is not just about open houses.
It's about open minds.
See you guys.
See you guys.